Hi everyone, we are here today to ask questions and answer questions related to Commodore 64 video tutorials, which you can get on the website 64bites.com. Maybe let me share my screen with you. If you have any questions related to the video tutorials, feel free to post them on the chat. Alternatively, you can go into the description of the video, description under the streaming, and you will find the link to the Zoom, which is the application that I use to stream the video, and you can join me there and we can talk face to face. Let me first share the screen with you. Oh, maybe Google Chrome would be better. Or maybe not. Let me share the screen. Okay, whenever you have any questions, just post them to the chat and I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. Let me prepare that a bit. We don't need that. And we don't need that. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, I'll just explain what 64 bytes actually is. So in 2014, I decided it's about time to start learning myself how to program the Commodore 64 in assembly. And for me, it was not that hard because I'm a professional programmer, but I always wanted to do that. And I always wanted to create games or demos for Commodore 64 and figure out how to do the hard stuff and those effects that I've seen in games and demos. So finally, in 2014, I managed to finally start learning how to program Commodore 64, teach other people, especially I just started doing that and what I needed to learn in order to teach others. So I decided to create a video series and call it 64 bytes, which is a pun on the words. It's like chunks. And the idea is that it is a series of short videos. Each one is a byte of knowledge. Each one is a byte that gives you something. So for example, if you want to learn how to load high-res, how to turn on high-res bitmap mode and load an image, you can just watch one episode. And this one is just 7 minutes, 23 seconds. And once you do that, you get this aha moment. Oh, so that's how you do it. So each episode is fast-paced. I usually explain a lot of stuff, and I need to do a lot of research in order to compress this kind of knowledge into one single byte. So each video is 5 to 7 to maybe 10 minutes long, but it contains a lot of stuff. So you can watch the video, and that's one of the things that you can consume this content. And once you do that, you get this aha moment when you know how to display, for example, the high-res bitmap mode, or for example, how to use the sprite pad to design sprites, or maybe how to do test-driven development in assembly in Commodore 64. So those are simple concepts that are not that easy to explain, but I usually manage to do that in just 5 minutes. So that's one of the things when you want to get an idea of how something is done. But if you want to learn more, and if you want to do it by yourself, then you need to follow along. And with each video, you get complete transcript of the episode, so you won't miss a single word. Especially, I'm not a native speaker, so I might make some mistakes. And there is a full source code with each step explained, so you can build a program that I code on the screen. You can do it yourself in a simple steps, and for each step you have the source code from the beginning to the finish. And also there are programming exercises, so you can do them to expand your knowledge in this particular topic. And you can watch those videos online or download them, and there is no DRM, no bullshit. So if you buy those videos, they are yours. So what kind of topics you can find on 64bites? If you go to the episodes website, you can find 105 episodes on various different topics. And if you go to the bottom of the page, we start from scratch. So first I explain which tools I use. And in this series, I use only cross-platform tools that work on any machine. So for running programs, we don't do it on real Commodore 64, although you can do it. But for programming, it's not needed. Oh, hey, Matthew. Great to see you. Do you have maybe any questions about Commodore 64? Well, maybe not Commodore 64 this time, but 64bites. If you want to say something, you need to click on the microphone icon in the lower left bottom of your screen, I think. If not, you can also listen or type in the chat. And if you have any questions, I'll happily answer them. Getting back to the topic, we start from really simple stuff. Well, we start from the bottom. So I explain which tools I use, and I don't use a real Commodore for programming, because the great thing is that right now we have the greatest tools for programming Commodore 64 that were built ever. So we have great emulators, and probably the best one is called Vice. We have the cross assemblers, which are assembly language compiler. They compile assembly language into machine code, which is understandable by Commodore 64. And the best one, in my opinion, right now is Kick Assembler. It is written in Java, so it runs on all platforms, and it's free to use. So I can recommend that wholeheartedly, especially that the Kick Assembler has a lot of features that other assemblers don't have. Usually assemblers have macros. Usually assemblers have some different tools that are pretty rudimentary, but the Kick Assembler has a whole programming language that you can use during compilation time of your program. So for example, if you want to generate a table of values that are generated with the sign function, you can do that within the same tool, that is KickAssembler. You just program a simple function that generates an array of numbers, and you put them into the memory into your program. So it's great. And in the series, I also use Sublime Text as a text editor, because you can get it for free and it works on every platform. Right now, I would probably recommend if you, for example, prefer some other text editor, you are free to use that. But if you want to follow along exactly what I do on the screen, I would recommend Sublime Text. Personally, I'd prefer Vim, but if I were to explain how to exit Vim, I would need to record some separate episodes just on that. So after we learn which tools we use and when we install them, we can get to BASIC, and actually to the basics of BASIC. So the basics of BASIC are just immediate mode BASIC commands. So when you turn on the Commodore 64, you can immediately type some basic commands. And this is what we learned in the first episode. In the second one, actually the third on the list, we learn how to write programs in BASIC. And it's actually really simple, because we just need to prepend each line of containing BASIC command with a number. And if we do that, they are not executed immediately, but they are inserted into the memory, and then we can run them using run command. And so we continue with this simple episodes about programming in BASIC. So there is one about pick and poke, which are commands, basic commands that are used to write stuff in the memory and read from it, which is a really important thing on Commodore 64, because pretty much every subsystem of Commodore 64 is somehow mapped onto the memory. So if you want to interact with the sound chip, or if you want to interact with the graphical chip, you need to do that through the memory. So a lot of programming on Commodore 64 is just either remembering or looking up some different addresses in the memory and then writing some magical numbers into those addresses, and then magical things happen. If you combine it with a timing, then you can write demos. So in just 5 or 6 episodes, we cover a lot of stuff in BASIC. And we don't cover everything, because this series is not focused on programming BASIC. This series is rather focused on getting into programming assembly as soon as possible. So as soon as we have the building blocks like pick and poke and for loops and the read and data commands, then we can write the assembly the hard way. So we learn how to, what actually assembly is, what is the machine code. It's basically a series of bytes in the memory that has special meaning. And if we know how to construct those bytes, we can write programs in machine code. So first we learn how to write assembly the hard way. So we use BASIC and read data and for loops to input program into the memory. And we see that the program written like program that is written into the memory in the machine code on Commodore 64 works, then we can go further and finally go into programming assembly the same way instead of the hard way. So we just do the same thing as in the previous episode, but then we jump into the cross assembler, and we do that in the kick assembler. We use some cool features, and then we write the same program, we compile them on our machine, we get the PRG program, which we can then drag and drop to the emulator, or we can use a special cartridge like the Ultimate. I forgot the exact name, but you can get a special cartridge that you can use a USB stick, put into the cartridge with the PRG file, and it works. So you can transfer files that you compiled on your normal machine, like on a laptop, into the real Commodore 64. But if you don't own the Commodore 64, you can still use the emulator and it works perfectly fine. So when we get into assembly, then magical things start to happen. So we start to learn different things about assembly, how to jump around, how to use jump, JSR, and RTS commands to jump around the memory, jump around the programs. And then we learn how to add numbers together. Then we learn how to subtract them. Then we learn how to make decisions in our programs. So something like if statements in assembly language. So in assembly, we call them branching, because our program, when it executes, it can go to one branch of the program or even simple things in other languages, like if statement or a for loop, are quite complicated in assembly. But once it's not that hard, actually. So then we learn about comparisons. What is the Z flag? What is BEQ, BNE? So those are branching instructions. And we have CMP command, which is compare, and we compare two numbers together and so on. And then we get into the interesting topic. So I'm a professional programmer. And when I used to be focused on doing backend programming in Ruby on Rails, and there is a really great testing culture among Ruby on Rails programmers. And there is the way design programs is test-driven development. And the idea is that you write a test and the test needs to fail. And usually when the test fails, it shows you some kind of a green, some kind of a red warning. Then then and only then, when the test fails, you write part of the program, and the part of the program needs to make the test pass. And usually when the tests pass, they are marked as green. And once the tests are green, you are sure that the part of the code is running correctly, and then you can refactor the code. So make it a bit more beautiful, a bit more simple, and so on. And then you repeat the cycle. So you go through the red, green, and refactor. And the great thing is that you can really easily create a testing framework on Commodore 64. And this is what I show in this episode. So in just a couple of minutes, create a real testing framework. So another interesting thing, let me digress. I was inspired by how easy it is to create a testing framework that I actually created one. It's called 64spec. And I need to fix the website because the video is not loading right now. But you can find it on GitHub. And basically, it's a full-fledged testing framework that you can use from the command line from your laptop and execute tests on your program, run like testing your program written on Commodore 64. It's just a proof of concept. I wouldn't expect that many people to actually use it for for writing demos in test-driven way, but you can do it. So it looks kind of pretty, and it shows you how many tests are failing, and well, the usual stuff that the testing framework does. One interesting thing is that I've added a lot of interesting functionality. So this is how you use it. First, you import the testing framework. It is written in just one assembly file. Then you need to initialize it, and then you write some code. And then you write a test for it. And finally, you execute a macro that finishes the whole thing. So this is pretty interesting because we have assertions. So we have some pseudo commands, which are kind of macros in KickAssembler. So here I write a test that assert A. So we need to assert that the A register is equal to number 42. And this is the passing test. So actually the source code starts here. So first we import the 64 spec, we initialize it, and we finish it. And here we need to add some assertions. So at the beginning, we don't have any tests, so everything is green. And then we add an assertion. So we expect that if we run some code, the accumulator will have a value inside 42. So now the test is failing because accumulator right now doesn't have a value 42 inside. So then we need to write a bit of a code, and the test is passing, so we are green. And this is a really simplified example, but it shows you that you can have a full-fledged testing framework running on Commodore 64. And 64 spec has multiple different assertions, so we can compare some. It can also count cycles. So you can write an assertion for a specific part of the code that takes specific number of cycles. So this part might be interesting for demos. So if you create a routine that makes the raster stable, and you need to make sure that it runs in a specific number of cycles, then you can use the testing framework to ensure that. So that's one of the things. So it's completely open source, so you can find it on GitHub, and I invite you to check it out. So getting back to the series, we are at the beginning. So we just learned how to make test-driven development on Commodore 64, which is pretty amazing. And then we get into metaprogramming. So using this powerful compile time language that KickAssembler has built in. And then we do some more test-driven development. And then we start to do some loops, because like for loops, there is no such thing as a for loop in assembly. We need to do it by hand by using branching instructions to jump around the code. And then we learn about the text rendering, rendering using kernel routines. So kernel is the operating system inside of the Commodore 64. It is written on one of the chips in the ROM, sorry, and you can use it to you can use subroutines that are built into the kernel to do some interesting stuff. For example, to output some characters on the screen, or to load something from a disk, or to load something from a cassette, and so on. Then we learn a bit about the PETSCII encoding, which is kind of ASCII, but it's a predecessor of ASCII. It's a special type of a standard of encoding characters on Commodore 64, which you need to know when you want to use the kernel instructions. And then we have an episode about using the 64-spec, the framework that I created and I told you about before. If you see an episode that has this blue button, you can get it for free. And it's really easy because you just need to write 0 here. Well, if you can write 1,000 here and then you will buy it for $1,000, but I would recommend to put 0 here or $1 here and then add to cart and just get this episode. When you do that, the only thing that you need to do is to click pay, but you don't need to pay anything. You just need to write your email for free. And you will get the episode in your inbox, and you will get the link to the platform called Gumroad, which I use at the moment to host my videos. So you can stream it there, or you can download it into your computer, and then you will get some bonuses, which are the transcript for the episode, the source code, and exercises, and sometimes some additional materials. So in the next episode, we'll learn about Boolean operations. Then we learn about joystick handling. And the great thing about this series is that each episode build on top of each other. So we couldn't handle joystick properly if we wouldn't know how to use Boolean operations. And we couldn't use Boolean operations if we wouldn't know anything about jumping around our code, which is here. So if you start from the beginning, you will learn all required building blocks to go further. So we can actually learn to program Commodore 64 with this series starting from scratch. But that's not the only way to use those episodes. So you can also, if you are an experienced programmer, you can use it as a library of techniques, because like each of those episodes is just a 5-minute long. And each of those episodes contain a full transcript, which has the explanations and all those memory locations. And each episode contains the source code. So I don't remember the memory map of Commodore 64. There are some numbers that I remember, like I will never forget, like 53210 and 53280 and 53281, which is the border color and the background color of Commodore 64. But there are some locations in the memory that are important, but I really can't be bothered to remember them because I can use my own videos and my own transcript and the source code that I created some time ago. And usually when I need to remind myself how to handle the joystick properly, how to get all the data from the specific part of the memory and what to do with that, I just take the source code, just read it for a little while, turn on the video, and in 5 minutes, I remind myself, oh, so that's how you do it. So you can treat it as a course that goes from the beginning to the more complex topics, but you can also treat it as a library of techniques. And that's especially useful if you don't want to remember all this stuff. You don't need to keep it here. You just keep it in the 64 bytes library. So we learn how to handle joystick in the continuous way. So when you press it, then we check for the state of the joystick every frame. And this way we can implement, for example, a platformer because we are continuously polling for the changes in the state of the joystick. Oh, one more thing. If you are not subscribed to this channel, I recommend you do that, because I will not only publish more stuff on Commodore 64 in the future, I will publish more free stuff on YouTube in the future. And not only in the form of live videos like this one, but also I will publish parts of those episodes, new episode, and special content only for YouTube. So yeah, next year will be probably really interesting for Commodore 64. Yeah, so what is there as well? There are episodes about the internals or the useful stuff in the Kick Assembler itself. So we have namespaces in Kick Assembler, which can allow us to make the code more manageable if you have like multiple files in the project. So then you don't have the name clashes and stuff like that. Then we talk about data structures that you can do using the Kick Assembler, which is really handy, but that's something that you don't really need to know if you. That would be interesting for people who are already programmers, but if you are not interested in that, that might be kind of challenging, because we need to learn not in assembler that runs during compilation time. Hey, Vasilis. So just to remind you, if you have any questions, you can post them to the chat on the YouTube. And if you see the description under the streaming, you should be able to see the link, the application that I use to stream the video. But you can also join me because it's a teleconferencing software. Yes, great, Vasilis. Hi, how are you? If you want to, you can unmute yourself and ask questions, and you can also turn on your camera so we can see each other and it will be a bit more interesting. Otherwise, you can just stay here and just listen, or you can watch the same thing on YouTube. So basically. But if you want to ask a question, just right now, you can make the left part of your screen, I think, and unmute yourself. And you can also turn on your camera if you want. And that's also for everyone right now on YouTube. You can join the Zoom application. Don't worry, it won't be recorded. I will remove the replay of the streaming. If not today, I will do it tomorrow because it's like really late and I won't probably have time to do that. And so getting back to the episodes, then we have a series of episodes about sprites. What are the sprites? How to define the iris bitmaps for sprites, how to define multicolor bitmaps for sprites, how to design sprites in the sprite pad, which is a Windows program, but you can run it under Wine, which is the emulator for Windows that run on Linux and Mac systems. So it's kind of a cross-platform. Then we learn how to import sprite pad files from this program. Then we learn how to animate sprites, how to optimize the animations, how to automate the setup, and so on. So there are a lot of episodes, and you can, if you want to just check one of them, because let's say you want to learn how to animate characters, you can click here and you can buy this particular episode. You can add it to cart. You can click pay, and here you need to add your credit card number, which I shouldn't probably show mine. And the interesting part is that you can, if you have a company that, if you are based in Europe, there will be a VAT, value added tax, added to the price. If you are in the USA, that's not a problem. You will pay the listed price. But if you are in Europe and you have a company, you can add your tax identification number and you add the tax. That this series is a proper you can put it into company expense. And I'm completely serious about that. You learn programming in this series. So the other thing I want to show you is that if you are interested in more than 1 or 2 episodes, I wouldn't recommend to buy them one by one, even though they are now discounted like 40% instead of normal price, about $4, you pay $2.30. You can buy episodes in bulk. So they are combined in so-called seasons, which are just bundles of 9 episodes each. And usually there is some kind of a theme behind the season. So season 11 is about putting sprites on the border, counting cycles, splitting screen, and so on. Season 10 is about raster stabilization and opening the borders. Then we have seasons about the sound. Then we have seasons about raster interruptions, about timing IRQs, which is really important for further episodes about sound. And we have scrolling text, we have opening borders. We have season 6 that is focused on graphics. Season 5 is about making IRQs, interrupt handling, about stack, zero page, managing ROM and RAM, some different ways of jumping that are unusual, for example, using RTS to jump, and so on. So basically, you can buy all 9 episodes for $11.99. So if you go to the single season website, you can see the comparison in price. Oh no, if you go to a single episode website, so let me go to episodes. And if you click, for example, on let's say this one, oh no, not from here. If you go to here, so you are on the website for a specific episode. So here you can read about it, what it's all about, the video, and so on. And you can see the price comparison. So you can either get 1 episode and then you pay $2.39 right now, or you can get it with season 10 and then you get it for $12. So this gives you a price per episode, which is this low. So if you plan to learn a bit more about Commodore 64, I don't recommend to go through separate episodes. I would recommend to just buy seasons. Oh, thank you, Matthew. Matthew says that he purchased all seasons and episodes a long time ago, and he highly recommends them. Thank you for your kind words. One of the things for you, since you have all episodes, which includes season 12, I will finally get around to record the last 3 episodes of the season, and they will be somehow related to BASIC. So in season 12, we are back to BASIC. but this time we are back to basic from assembly. So in the previous episodes, like in the beginning, we created a basic program that put some bytes into memory, and we created an assembly program. And here we do something opposite. So we take the program in assembly, and then we put some bytes into memory, and we create a program in basic, which for me was really amazing because I always wanted to do that. And one of the things that I plan to figure out is how to create like an extension for basic, like Simmons's basic, or for example, the one in Final 3 or in Black Box. So there are different ways to extend the basic and to add additional commands. And for me, it's kind of pretty interesting. And let me know if you find it interesting and if you would like to know how to create your own extension for basic. So you can either write in the chat or write me an email. And it's michał@64bites.com. Hello, Tim. So yeah, I was talking about that I will finally get around to create remaining episodes for season 12, and they are long overdue. And I'm sorry for everyone who was waiting. Soon. I won't give you an exact date because it always ends bad, but that's a high priority for me right now. So let me talk about more plans before. So if there is anybody on the stream that don't have like all episodes or want to buy some episodes, I would recommend to do that right after this meeting ends, because then you will have like an hour to make a decision. And if you are not sure, just go to episodes, and if you type episodes/free, all free episodes that are published. And there are quite a lot of them, so you can pick and choose what looks like interesting for you. I would recommend, for example, this one about scrolling text and maybe raster interrupts, because they are kind of interesting, I think. And this one is also great. It shows you how to load a beautiful image on Commodore 64. So yeah, basically you can learn a lot for free, but if you want to learn more, you can buy more of them. And if you want to buy more than 2, I would suggest go with seasons and do that. If you want to do it, I would recommend to do it today in the next 1.5 hours, because the price will go up after that time. Okay, let me answer the question. Is not too short? That is the question. Is 5-minute episode not too short? Depends on your needs. Design the series in such way. So if you watch the episode, you learn about the concept in 5 minutes. And it's like, oh, so that's how you open borders. Ah, so that's how you display more than 8 sprites. Oh, so that's how you make a speech synthesis on Commodore 64, and so on. So if you don't want to type the program by yourself, it's actually great, because we are all busy, right? And like usually people who are interested in Commodore 64 probably have families. Some of them have kids, and usually they have jobs. And you have me, and I dig through old books and try to compress this knowledge into 5-minute video. So you watch it and you know how it's done. But if you want to learn how to do it, if you want to do it yourself, then you need to spend a bit more time with the video. And you need to become friends with the pause button, with slowing down the video, because I speak much faster on those videos than right now. So because the videos are supposed to be dynamic, they are supposed to be compressed, and because it's just a single byte of knowledge, and you watch them and you know it. But then you get the full transcript, and I recommend to and see start with the source code and then start from there. So let me stop sharing the screen for a moment, and then I will show you what's inside of the video. But first I need to download a free episode by myself. Let me just do it for a second. Oh yeah, thank you, Matthew. So Matthew says that 5 minutes is perfect, not too long to get baffled, overloaded with info, short enough to quickly watch. That's exactly the idea. Oh, so okay, I can actually show you the screen probably. Yes. Okay, let me get back to sharing the screen. This one. So I just bought a free video. So I can show you on some other one. So I added to cart. I name a fair price, which can be 0 or it can be 20 if you are really generous, but I don't expect that. And there are plenty of episodes that are not free. So just put a 0 in here and add it to cart. And then you just need to oh, that's weird. Okay, if you buy an episode earlier, it's not that easy. So you get the episode. Add it. Pay, and you pass an email, and you will get, so this episode will be sent to your email, but also you can view the product on a website. And the products are hosted on gumroad.com. So you can either watch the video here, so you can stream it through Gumroad and enjoy this awesome intro. Capabilities of Commodore 64 and all that stuff. So I show you some slides that show you the memory layout, and then I jump into the code somewhere here. And so on. So you will watch it in 7 minutes and you will know what is happening. So then you can download everything. So you can save it to Dropbox. So if you use Dropbox, it's pretty comfortable because it will just synchronize with your Dropbox immediately. or you can download the episode as a zip file. In seasons, which are much bigger than just a single episode, this option might not be available. So in case of seasons, you just need to either download separate episodes or save everything to Dropbox. Right now I'm streaming, so downloading is taking a bit longer, but usually it's like as fast as your internet connection. So I'm supposed to have like a 30 megabits right now, but yeah, when you're streaming, it's not that easy. So once it will be downloaded, I will show you what's inside and how can you use it yourself. You can also like download a single file. And let me see. So this is the file, and you can open it, for example, with some kind of an editor. For example, Sublime Text. So if you open it with Sublime Text, it will look something like that. So this is the first file that you start with. And oh, so this is the episode. And those are all files that you get. This is the bitmap that we will load into our program. This is the, I think, color map. Or, oh yeah, so this is the part of the memory that is responsible for defining the bitmap. Which bit is enabled, which bit is part of the background, and which bit is part of the foreground. And this part defines colors. For it, part of the screen. And I don't actually remember that much of that because I store my memory in this episode. Whenever I need to remind myself how to load the bitmap, I just watch 7 minutes of the video, or I read a transcript, which contains everything. So this is basically the same thing that this is my voiceover. This is the transcript of my voiceover with the code. So in places like this one, I explain like which part of the code has been added during which part of the video. So if you follow along this file, you can, and you start with this file, you will end with subsequent files. So let me show you what I mean by that. So this is the first file. This is the second file that contains additional changes. This is the third file. This is the fourth file. This is the fifth file. So if you diff those files, you can see what actually changed in the video. So it's really easy to follow along. And if you use the transcript. Once you are ready and you followed along, so then you can take a look at the exercises. And in this case, we have just one. So it usually tells you that you need to start with one specific source code and replace some part of the code with something else. So this is something that you need to solve on your own. And we also have a secret group for all. And you can post your solutions there. And basically, we can discuss them on our secret Facebook group if you want. So this is for people who really want to learn how to program this specific thing. And also I can show you probably how the final thing looks like. If I remember to compile it, it should be command B, hopefully. Build system. We are using Kick Assembler, so if we build it, there is an error because I haven't created a bin file, which is interesting. But let's make the compiler happy. And if we run it again, we get the whole program. So you can run in the same way you can run previous files. So the previous one, so this one loads the color info. But, oh, sorry, I don't. So this one, which is one step earlier, shows you what happens if we only load a bitmap. And the image looks like that. So this is the image that has been loaded with colors. So this contains the bitmap data and the color data, and this one contains only bitmap data. So here you can see interesting stuff, that part of the image, it's not that this is always background color in this part of the image. So on Commodore 64, you have some different constraints. For example, you can use, in this mode, you can use only 2 colors in one 8x8 block, which I explained on the video. And sometimes, well, most of the times, artists needs to be creative in order to create an image that looks great. This is not that easy on Commodore 64, and this is beyond my my abilities. I can teach you how to load an image on Commodore 64, but somebody else would need to teach you how to draw it in some kind of a drawing program. But it's interesting that some parts looks like they should be a background, they are not. So without the color info, this image looks not that great, but with added color info, it's amazing. So this one in particular is made by Agnes Heyer. I hope I pronounce her name correctly, but if somebody knows that I'm wrong, please let me know. She also has a YouTube channel, which is also pretty interesting. One of the things that you can find on her YouTube channel is how she draws this exact picture. So this is really amazing because you can see. And she also explains those constraints of Commodore 64. So this is really helpful if you combine this video with the episode about with my episode about loading the bitmap, then you have a pretty in-depth knowledge of what is going on, and you can actually draw your own image and display it on Commodore 64. Hi, David. I'm glad that you joined the Zoom. If you want to ask me a question, I would be honored to answer it, but you need to first unmute yourself using the microphone icon in the lower left bottom of your screen. You can also show your face if you prefer, but that's not obligatory. Anyway, everyone, people on Zoom and people on YouTube, I would like you to ask me some, ask some questions. If you have some questions related to 64 bytes, related for my plans for 64 bytes, what is going to happen with in the future with this website, maybe you are interested in some specific topic, just let me know, and let's use those 10 remaining minutes to just that interests you about 64 or 64 bytes. I would love to hear that. David, would you like to talk with me, like in the real time on Zoom? If so, just turn on your mic. Hi, great to hear you. Okay, you want to. You can also ask some questions on the Zoom chat, and I will read them for everyone and try to answer them. Or for everybody else, you can ask some question on YouTube. Oh, a person called X says, thanks, I have now only season 1. Great. Which one of other seasons interests you the most? Or what would you like to learn about Commodore 64 the most? Maybe I can help you with that. Oh, I didn't know that. So David tells me that this Zoom does not work very well from Firefox or Linux Zoom client. Oh yeah, unfortunately. So yeah, I don't have that much experience with Linux. I'm too lazy to do that. So I used to work with Linux when I was studying, but yeah, I'm too impatient for that. So right, I use a Mac, and it's Linuxy enough for my own taste, but it also works most of the time. So sorry, I cannot help you with that, unfortunately, but you can type your questions in the chat if you prefer. Oh, sorry to everyone, I typed my email wrong. It's obviously michał@64bites.com. I forgot an S before. Sorry for that. Oh, the great question. What's with the missing episodes in season 12? So those episodes, for everyone interested, it's season 12 does not contain all episodes. And yeah, I'm very ashamed because I was supposed to create those episodes a long time ago, and I'm sorry for that. But this is the first priority on my list, to create all those episodes and finish up the season 12. And if you bought season 12 at any point in the past, or if you will buy season 12 in any point in the future, before the episodes are released, I will release them and let you know when they are ready, and you don't need to pay, obviously, for them again. You don't need to pay for them again. Just to be clear, you will get them for free if you bought season 12. And it's Commodore is better than Mac. I have to agree with that partially. One thing is for sure, that on this computer here, with every new release of the software, like every new operating system, it gets slower. And Commodore 64, with each new application, becomes faster or more beautiful, which is amazing. Oh, Matthew, great question. I haven't. So the question was, did I do an episode about keyboard input? And no, I haven't. And that's a very good topic for one of the episodes for season 12. Because it's not that hard and it's related to the basic topic. So yeah, that might be a good idea to create an episode on that. Oh yeah, that's true. Commodore 64 is still usable after so many years. Not only usable, but like newer programs that are released on Commodore 64 are faster, more beautiful, better, and they're simply amazing. So I've been doing research because like I've been trying to and I've been traveling around different conferences and giving this talk about that the Commodore 64, like programming on Commodore 64 is not that hard. And I was blowing people's minds away with like, for example, test-driven development on Commodore 64, or that you can write asynchronous programming or on Commodore 64. And when I showed them demos that were released on Commodore 64 and revealed them that it can display only 8 sprites, that it can, its CPU was like 1,000 times slower than in the like iPhone 4. And then I showed them a demo that like displayed some 3D graphics. So everybody was blown away. And I've been doing research of how many games and how many demos were released every year. And basically, like there are around 70 new games and 50 new demos, or the other way around, released every year. And if you count every production, like every image, every music, every sound, every I don't know, every intro, every 64K crack throw and the releases on the crack scene and stuff like that, you count them in thousands. Every year, thousands of new releases are produced every year. And for a couple of previous years, the trend was going up. So we have like new hardware. There is this ultimate hardware, like ultimate motherboard. So this is the Commodore 64 emulator that is done in hardware by the same person that created this cartridge, which I talked before about transfer, which allows you to transfer your files to a real Commodore 64. We have Wi-Fi modems. We have the C64, which is another hardware emulator. We have some newer motherboards that allow you to take some chips from original Commodore 64 and put them into this new, more energy efficient motherboard and make your Commodore 64 live a bit longer. Thank you. Apparently, I'm relatively good to understand. That's great. Yeah, the Ultimate 64. This is that thing. So if you're looking for the cartridge, it's called Ultimate 1541, which is 1541. Oh, so this is the cartridge, Ultimate 2 Plus, which allows you to transfer your files on the Commodore 64. And there is also Ultimate 64, which is this motherboard that is actually the Commodore 64 emulator done in hardware. Oh yeah, that's true. Like there are more demos because like only the most popular are popular. That's a good point, Zoran. Yeah, but the thing is that we have many new products coming for Commodore 64. There are some documentaries, there are some books for Commodore 64, and some guy is making apparently a series of video screencasts that are discounted right now. And hint, hint, you can get them today. Anymore. So yeah, just one last time. If you don't have those videos, this is the best time to get them because they will get 40% more expensive in 1 hour. So yeah, if you want to learn Commodore 64, to program Commodore 64, yeah, just grab a couple of episodes and start to watch them. And that's the first step. And then type something and try to learn it. And yeah, and then create a demo and make me proud. I would love that. So a couple of people already made demos based on the 64-byte series. So for example, I created in this episode called, this is the 64th episode and it displays 64 sprites. And this is, there is some kind of a wave pattern that is being displayed. And one person just took this part of the episode and created a demo of that, or one scene in a demo, which is great. I love it. So feel free to use my code, reuse it, remix it, and create something out of it. It will only make me proud. Oh yeah, good point. The Ultimate cartridge has the assembler built in. So you mean the monitor, right? So one thing that I don't know if everyone understands, don't be mad at me. So the difference in monitor and the assembler. Assembler is a program that takes the assembly language and compiles it into some kind of a machine code. Usually it's a PRG program, or transfers it directly into the memory as machine code. Monitor is something that allows you to see the contents of the memory and modify the contents of the memory. Sometimes you can do it using the assemblers. You don't get macros and stuff like that. Oh, great. I didn't know that. So this the Ultimate cartridge has the turbo assembler. So that's not actually that hardcore. Turbo assembler was pretty good. But yeah, it's much more comfortable to program on a different machine than to do it on Commodore 64, because then, for example, you don't have that much memory. If you program on a different machine, you can use the whole memory for your program and to then run on Commodore 64. But if you are programming on a turbo assembler that runs on Commodore 64, the turbo assembler takes a chunk of the memory that you can't use. Unless it's on a cartridge and then you do some weird stuff with that, or unless it's in the ROM, but then it's not a standard Commodore system, frowned upon. Oh yeah, that's true. So C64, Memory-based card slot. Oh yeah, so that's about the freeze cartridges. So if you use the cartridge like Final Free or Action Replay, you can actually freeze the memory and then jump into the memory with the monitor and modify it like almost like in the real time. So one thing, I don't know if you are aware, but we also have like a really amazing C64 debugger. So this is a C64 debugger, which is running Vice that is embedded in this program. So this is the memory map. And the great thing about that is that you can zoom it and you can see the exact contents of the memory. And you can stop the program. And for example, you can change the memory content to be 44. And so on. So then you can zoom out. And then you can basically do a lot of stuff with that. For example, you can set breakpoints. You can, for example, set breakpoint on a raster line. Let's say raster line 100. And then if you run the program, you can see a crosshair here. Maybe 100 was not the best place to put a breakpoint on, because it's 100 hexadecimal, which is like 256 or something. So let's say 50. 0, 0, 50. Okay, now, so this is the raster position. And you can see exactly and this tool is amazing for debugging programs, and has the memory and see the memory as an assembly code, but we also can not this. Oh yeah, different layouts. So here you can see the cycle count of each instruction, for example. Here you can see the contents of each sprite at the moment, and so on. So it has quite a lot of features. So this part is for like debugging and so on. So yeah, basically you can do a lot in this program. And this is something that we didn't have like 7 years ago or something like that. It is created by a guy known as Slajerek. He's also from Poland. I'm from Poland. But he lives in Białystok. I live in Krakow. And he is a really amazing programmer. So he created this C64 debugger, and it's the best tool that you can get for Commodore 64 and for programming. And I think I will leave you with that because it's late. It's 11 p.m. Here in Poland. And I hope I introduced you to 64 bytes enough, and hopefully interested you in programming Commodore 64 and making it alive again. So if you want to grab some episodes from 64 bytes website, you can still do that. let me show you the website again. It's 64bites.com. Go to the seasons and grab as many as you please. And then make something out of it, because it's not, don't collect those episodes, just learn something, create a game, create a demo, and let me know if you do. I will be really, really proud. So that's all, folks. And I would like to thank you very much for coming. And well, thank you very much for everyone who supported me. And if you want to continue doing that, I would be really grateful. And I promise I will do some more stuff related to Commodore 64. Yeah, thank you very much. Bye, everyone.